Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and welcome to the pod where we chat, argue, and wax poetic about the movies that we love, hate, or that are simply worth talking about. All movies have something to say, and we enjoy trying to analyze what they capture. Welcome to The Shatter After. I am Brandon Alvarado, the Scarlet Fan here, and I'm so excited to be back on another take of the awesome The Shatter After podcast, part of the Novice Cinephile Network, where we talk about the movies that we love, the movies that we hate, and dissect them and analyze them exactly how we do with all our friends whenever we go to a movie and then go to a bar, go to a Burger King. I talk about Burger King a lot. Puerto Rico Church of Chicken, that's the place. But when you devour food and enjoy it and just talk about the movie, talk about the scenes, the things that impact us the most, so that shatter after the film rises and we all enjoy and enrich the experience of enjoying the movie. Today, specifically, we're not talking about a movie in general. We're talking about a Marvel Studios series, which, again, Marvel Studios is mostly known for movies, and they're expanding the universe to TV, and the quality is there, so it's a great show. We're doing a season review of Moon Knight, Season 1 limited series. I don't know yet. Apparently, it's season 1 now. I suppose it was limited series before. But we're going to talk about Moon Knight from Marvel Studios, starring Oscar Isaac, Mike Kalawawi, Ethan Hawke, and it's a great show. And I got great crew here. As always, I am joined by the great Isaac Wolf to my left.
And hello. I must say that this time will be simply tremendous.
Okay, that's amazing. And joining us is the awesome Adam. What's up, man?
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm rocking the camera today. I guess I'm flying solo on this, which is fine. But see,
You're,
everybody knows my face, so it's all good. I think I have enough energy
you-
to fill the
you're the
screen.
most important one. You're the most important one to see.
Not true. The most important one is the background. Okay, so, um, but yes, we're ready. We're here to talk Moon Knight. It's been a long time coming, and of course, it left us wanting more. And there's a tease for season 2, and what a very interesting show. And what a great job, in my opinion, because it's so different than everything we've seen before. I was listening to my cousin's podcast, the Fanboy Podcast, and he was talking with Brett about it. And the reason that Mario liked it is similar. I don't know, is because we're related, maybe, but we like it kind of because of the same reasons, because it was so different. This is something that Marvel just did something that never did before. So before we jump in, we like to go around the table, first experiences, but also I kind of want to also hear from you guys. What did you know about the character going in? Like, were you a Moon Knight fan? Have you read books? Or is this your first experience altogether going into Moon Knight? Adam, you're the guest. You first. Moon Knight. Tell
Awesome.
me.
Yeah, man. So I was super excited for Moon Knight. Actually, Moon Knight is my third favorite Marvel character following Captain America and Gambit.
Oh, damn.
So I had very high expectations going into this. I was a little skeptical because Moon Knight's a hard character to cover. I
Yes.
especially under a Disney brand, because he's not your typical type of hero. He's more of an anti-hero, and then
Yeah.
when you're having to deal with the multiple personalities, I didn't know if they would do that justice. And so I'm very happy to say that I was extremely more than not pleased. There was a lot of I think Isaac did a fantastic job, which was also skeptical about him going in because we all remember Apocalypse, and that was a little.
That wasn't
But
entirely his fault.
that's true. That's true. But you know what? He proved me wrong. He did an awesome job, and I came out of the show really happy. As for my experience with Moon Knight, yes, I have read some of the comics. I've seen him in some of the shows. Each iteration of Moon Knight is a little bit different, depending on like what show you're watching or what comic you're reading. But more than general, he's crazy. He's basically Batman, but if Batman was insane. Yeah. Uh, I think I lost everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I
I'm sorry,
Okay,
I
there-
accidentally muted my mic, so the
Oh.
noise of everything in the world.
Same.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
But yeah, so what I was saying, instead of going blank, but yeah, we don't use the word crazy here. Okay.
There we go.
I'm
I'm
kidding.
sorry.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm emanating my inner doctor, whatever is, Doctor
okay.
Harrow or whatever.
That's true. That's true. I should know about my psych. I'm a psych background. The psych was my undergrad. So there you go. I hear you.
I'm glad
I
to
did.
know that America's your education dollars.
I know, man. All my professors are just like, oh my god, I can't believe he did that. But-
And live. No, it's
I know.
Yeah.
The internet will never forget.
but that's awesome. That's awesome. Um, do you have anything else before we move on?
No, that's for more or less for me. I just think that overall, awesome job. I was hoping that it was going to go for a Shutter Island vibe, and it kind of did in some ways. So not as horror as I would have wanted to, but in terms of craziness and having to figure things out and do like, okay, what, like you think it's going one way and then it completely goes a different way. Awesome.
I'm gonna make a note here. I have a notepad because I'm responsible.
You
because
responsible.
because I definitely
That's
want
the
to go
biggest
back.
joke of today.
I actually want to go back to that Shutter Island because I think that's a very important observation that you made there. Isaac, Moon Knight, tell me.
Well, the only thing I really don't know about Moon Knight is from Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Actually, because
Well, it's
and
great because you got to think about it. I think that they expanded the roster of those games as the sequels came out because not every
I
game
don't
has all the characters,
think
right?
well, I think Moon
He's
Knight
in the
is
first one.
yeah,
And the
he's
third
in
one.
the second one also. I can't recall
Oh,
if he's in the third.
awesome.
Maybe he's.
That tells you how
But
important the character is, though. That's good.
maybe it's from through DLC. I don't know. But yeah, and then to some extent I just made some quick TLDR check on the character in general, so I know about the multiple personality disorder and all that jazz. But I can't really call that I was in that I knew the character in detail, if that
Right,
makes any sense.
right. So did when they announced that they're doing Moon Knight, Isaac, were you interested? Were you curious about it? Did you do a little bit of research, or were you like, I hope they don't ruin it?
I'm always in the.
Oh,
I hope
actually,
they
yeah,
don't ruin it.
that's your that's your status quo. That's your first, second, and third gear. Okay, fair enough. So with me, when it comes to Moon Knight, Isaac, you had anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Good, because I'm hyperactive with coffee right now after a long day. So I don't mean to interrupt you guys, but I want to make sure everybody says their piece. So feel the sugar. No, I'm sorry. That's my inner
No,
Latino
man.
drinking coffee. You know what I mean? It jump starts
That
right away.
cold brew.
So yes, hell yeah. So for me, Moon Knight was a lot of the stuff that I'm very pro Marvel Studios just because, and I think I don't know if I've said it on Twitter, especially when the season ended. I put a post on Twitter is that what I love about Marvel Studios is the fact that they believe in what they're doing and they trust in what they're doing and they trust their vision and they don't back out of anything. They decide to do something, they're going to do it. If it backfires, they'll find a way to fix it and they move on and they keep going, right? I love the fact that Marvel always doubles down. We've seen it always pay in spades. Maybe not that much in the Eternals. I haven't seen it though, but I've heard a lot of but I know that they like to double down and trust in the creative and what they're trying to do. That's why the Guardians blew up the way it did when everybody was like, who the hell are these guys? Right? So when they announced Moon Knight, I'm like, okay, I don't know who this is. I kind of I did a little bit of research, like I always do, try to have an idea who it is. I didn't know the whole thing about dual personality, but I love the fact that it was a great cast, and I want to say that I'm pleasantly surprised, and I really enjoyed the show because it was so different. Like, I like the fact that so we all here have seen Daredevil, right? We all here
Yeah.
we've all here seen Jessica Jones, right? So
Yeah.
so we know that there are great characters, ground characters, street heroes, right? And I think that what I know from Moon Knight, and especially what I've seen in the series, he kind of, even though there is this whole supernatural element to his superhero identity, he's more like a ground superhero, anti-hero, right? He's not like someone that you're gonna see against Dormammu or like Thanos. He's like your street level hero, kind of. Which is why whenever I heard of Moon Knight, I started thinking about like Daredevil and stuff like that, right? Like that kind of superhero. So I love the fact that we got a story that was so grounded because of how strong the performances were, especially with the main character and in the relationship with the people around him and his condition. That I like the fact that when it came to the whole Marvel Studios side of things, which is the bombastic, the pretty, the superhero stuff, it didn't feel empty. It felt like a good like release after all the groundwork of the character. Like what I love about this show is that this was not just a superhero show. This was a character study of
Definitely.
who Stephen Grant and who Marc Spector is, and how these identities collide with each other and begin colliding, and how that affects the fate of the world. And I like the fact that that is a crazy premise, and Marvel said, "Okay, that's what we're gonna do." Like, this is the character. That's what we're gonna do. Which is why, and I'm gonna throw this there before we jump into more details of Moon Knight. I am not that entirely worried about Miss Marvel. Like a lot of people are criticizing the whole thing about her powers are now different, quote unquote. But in my mind, I've always been a big believer that if you know how to translate the essence of the character, because when it comes to any kind of character in any kind of story, superhero, mythological, any kind, their abilities and the things that make them super in the world that they live in, that's not what makes the character great. Is the essence of that character, the traits, the personality, the train of thought, right? Which is why I loved when I was a kid. I was able to love and appreciate Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, because was I the only one that when saw the webbing coming out of his arms went like, wait a minute, that's not like that.
I was confused.
Right. I was like, that's not the way it's supposed to work. But at the same time, the portrayal for that version of Spider-Man was just so great. Because even though I prefer a different version of Spider-Man once he put his Peter Parker was just perfect. And the personal troubles, like the essence of Spider-Man was 100% there. So I could I could look away from those little things. And which is why I'm not worried about Miss Marvel, and which is why I love the fact, because Marvel through and through has always been faithful to the essence of the characters, no matter what they change or tweak to their benefit, which I think is why they've been so successful, in my opinion. And then, of course, I think, Adam, you were there, and Isaac, when I've always talked about how the Barry Allen in Justice League is not Barry Allen.
Yeah.
DC
a
makes
couple
that.
of times.
Yeah, DC makes that problem, but Marvel doesn't, which is why I enjoy Moon Knight and I'm not afraid of Miss Marvel. But going into Moon Knight, can we all just agree that Oscar Isaac was like, apart from the fact that we all know that Oscar Isaac is an amazing actor, can we appreciate the fact that the top tier actors, Ethan Hawke and Oscar Isaac, they were on. They did not phone in this.
Oh, they were awesome. Yeah.
And I dare say that no one really phoned it in.
Everyone was great. All the acting scenes were great, and I've never seen May Kalamawi anywhere, but she is amazing. Have you guys seen anything else that she's been in? I haven't, because if you have, please recommend stuff because she's awesome.
No, this was my first time seeing her in action as well, but she's
Yeah,
great.
she was great.
I'm looking at IMDb her IMDb page right now just to double check. We all know that there is always just that movie or that show that you might have watched and oh, she's from there.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. You're trying to see if you find something you can go like, ah, yeah. Now, what I let's talk about the show itself. Um, I think we can all agree it's kind of a slow burn.
Mhm.
But I like the fact that from the beginning, the biggest thing that you feel is I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And doesn't it feel good to feel that, especially when you see the Marvel Studios logo? You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and right. So tell me about it. You watched. So did you guys? Were you guys hooked from the first episode? Did it take a couple of episodes to get your attention and draw you in? How was the experience for you guys?
You can start, Adam.
Oh, okay. You want me to go? So for me, it was a slow burn, but I feel like you kind of had to do that with especially with a character as complex as Moon Knight. You have to kind of take its premise to set it up, and then addressing his. Yeah, the biggest thing that the show tackles is trying to introduce the audience to exactly what DID is, which is dissociative identity disorder, which is what
Right.
Moon Knight has, right? Or
Right.
specifically Marc Spector. And because if you don't explain it, people are just going to be like, okay, well, what is that, right? And so they take a very long time. Like I thought it was genius that they start off with not the main personality. They start off with Stephen Graham instead of Marc Spector, which super throws you off because you're like, wait, what? And that how Stephen finds out that he is not the main personality, and you're kind of on the journey with him. And for people who are not familiar with Moon Knight, they probably got super thrown off by that because you would assume that that's the main personality, which makes you sympathize more with him. And
Yeah.
so they did that on purpose. They kind of followed a more detective approach to the series, which is very in line with the Mr. Knight comics, which is more detective looking. And they kind of have you. The funny thing is that in each episode, they give you hints of what's going to happen. You have to keep your eyes open. But if you go all the way back to episode 1, it gives you hints on what's going to happen in like the future episodes. Like you
Interesting.
even from like the first episode, if you remember where Steven is with the little hippo plushie and he says that this is Tauret.
Yo.
I
Okay.
didn't think about that.
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
and it's funny you say that because I kept seeing like people posting on Twitter that there's certain QR codes throughout the show
yeah,
that if you're able to scan, which I have no idea how they did it, you get like free copies of Marvel comics, including Moon Knight,
yeah.
which is like
You get
what?
the Werewolf by Night, yep, which is the
You
first
can
comic he appeared in.
for example, when I watched this is random, I know, but when I watched playthrough stream of the recent Parable. When I watched someone play the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, there is a QR code, and I tried to scan it on the screen, and it connected. So you can do it like that.
Nice.
Yeah, it's crazy,
What?
man. Like you even get a hint from the first episode that there is a third personality from the very first episode.
Go on.
So if you remember, Mark is violent, but he's not super violent. And so the part where he wakes up and he has
And
blood
he's all
all over
bloody.
him, yes. But
Okay,
we
yeah,
get a hint
I
in a
got that.
later episode. Yep. We
Yes,
get a hint in a later episode that Mark wouldn't do that. So it's like, well, who would? And so
true.
that's Steven plays the personality that he's the innocent one. He's the more dissociated from all the events. Mark is the more grounded personality. And then Jake is the protective personality. He protects the other two. And so he's more not afraid to get his hands dirty
No
and
matter the
because
cost.
he's right, because he's the dark personality that due to the Mark's upbringing and stuff like that, we know that he created Steven. We never really get to see how he created Jake, but it can be assumed that Jake was the personality that eventually formed to take the beatings, to take all the stuff, and that's why he's darker compared to the other two.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that too, because it makes me think how um because it makes me think because we know that the Steven personality was created to
Right.
to take the beatings specifically in terms of so that Mark wouldn't remember what, or at least to sugarcoat those encounters, right?
Right.
But then I would think that maybe the Jake Lockley personality was also has to do with the violent turn in Marc Spector's life when he becomes like this mercenary, like this
Oh,
person
definitely.
that's willing to do that. Which is I mean, both theories I think are right because no, they don't say that. They don't say that. They don't explain it. But I think that those are awesome observations. Well done. I know I remember thinking about that, but you brought it home. But what I love about what you said that like people were lost in the beginning. Like I was kind of lost also, but I like the idea I love the idea of intentionally tricking new audiences of the characters and audiences that know the character. Because the
Definitely.
audiences that know the character know that Marc Spector is Moon Knight, and whatever happens stems from Marc Spector. And the fact that you don't necessarily meet Marc Spector till probably I think the second episode, I think threw a lot of people off. It threw me off. But I like that. I like not knowing what's happening. And I like the fact that the reason that we don't know what's happening is because this character is broken on the inside. And I like how
That's an understatement.
that is, and I true, and I love how that's the MacGuffin. Like you have this broken character that is viewing this journey in different angles, two angles that we can see, some angles we can't see, and I love how that influences all the decisions with all the different characters, all the interactions, as it builds towards that last three episodes, right? Where you have to deal with the brokenness. You know, like, and
Right.
and which is why I love how the show is a character study about how someone so broken can still become a hero. Because think about it, when we meet Moon Knight, he's not a hero. He's this dark entity that does the bidding of this Egyptian god. And we are being
Right.
told by this weird corpse looking god that is for the good of mankind, for the travelers of the night. But we don't know that. We just met them and he's creepy as hell. so, so, so we don't know why this
Definitely.
is happening. And it's not till that inner brokenness is mended together and healed, and it's not till Marc Spector comes to terms with himself and all the different versions all the different versions that he knows of himself, pun intended, that he becomes the hero that we need to beat Amit and Arthur Harrow. And I think that's in and of itself is a triumph because we've never met a Marvel character from Marvel Studios that is this broken in this way. Because, for example, one can argue that one of the most transformative journeys in a character's life in cinema, for Marvel Studios at least, is Tony Stark. His arc is one of the most interesting, one of the most deep and emotional. And his character goes a long way from Iron Man to Endgame. Like that he doesn't become the Iron Man that's able to sacrifice his life for everybody. He's not that. He that is a Tony Stark that has evolved from the moment that he decided to don the suit as a hero. Right? Mm-hmm. It took time, and we love that journey. And I love the fact that Marvel's still wanting to do this with these characters and break them down and do all this, which is great. And that's what I enjoyed most about this ride, because again, they double down. Did you enjoy this? Did you feel that they nailed the character study, Isaac? That type of element?
I can't really say that I know about this mental, the idea that he has. So in that regard, I can't say if they nailed it. But
no, I mean like when you watch. What I'm trying to say is not if you know about the illness. That's not what I meant. But like from what you saw, do you feel that they did justice to the tragedy that is the character of Marc Spector?
Yeah, I do really think they did. Especially when we went into one of the, I can't recall what episode it is, but when we get flashbacks to his early life,
that's episode 5. Yeah,
episode 5, when he meets the hippo and all that jazz.
Nobody's calling him Tower. We'll call him the hippo. That's it.
Yeah,
the hippo lady.
Yeah, which was just she was just amazing.
Yes.
But
she's hysterical.
Yeah, honestly, to some, I do wonder if episode 5 was my favorite episode in general.
I think it is. It is mine. Yeah, I think it is mine. Definitely, episode 5 is my favorite.
Oh, that's
because of the whole.
Yeah.
So, but I think they did because you were hooked. You were sort of like, where the heck is going on and all that jazz.
True. One of the things that I found fascinating about the story is that, like, I do understand how a lot of people kind of complained. I don't know if you guys saw it on Twitter, but one of the biggest complaints that a lot of people had of Moon Knight, apart from the fact that, let's be honest, I think overall, everybody in this room enjoyed it, right? There's a lot of people that didn't feel that hot about it, which is fine. Because not every show, not every Marvel movie is for everybody. There's a little bit for everybody. But one of the things that a lot of people kind of complained about that I kind of saw on the webs is that for a show that's titled Moon Knight, there's not a lot of Moon Knight. There's not that much like stuff in the suit. Like most of it is the man on the ground, which is either Stephen Grant or Marc Spector in the journey. Did that bother y'all in any way, shape, or form?
No.
How about you, Adam?
Not necessarily. Again, like, it depends on what iteration of Moon Knight you're going on. Because just like there's multiple Spider-Man, there's multiple Batmans, there's multiple. They were following a specific comic, which is more or less okay. Like even for people who really know Moon Knight, they changed a lot of things. So, for instance, Layla takes the place of Marlene, who is actually Moon Knight's wife in the comics, right? And Layla, they changed her character completely for the most part. And so it kind of made it even difficult for people who are following the comics to figure out where they're going. But they kind of followed more or less the comic where Marc Spector is institutionalized. And so he's like in an insane asylum, but they changed things. And so I could kind of see, again, like to tackle a character that's as complicated as Moon Knight, you kind of have to spend more time with the man versus the suit, right? You kind of have to spend more time with explaining, especially because they really wanted to specifically explain the differences between the main two personalities, right? Which is
Right.
Stephen Grant and Marc Spector. And then they also had to explain his backstory. Then they had to explain the whole deal with Khonshu, and then they have to kind of show that Khonshu. So Khonshu in the comics has also been an enemy of Moon Knight as well as his ally, and so they kind of have to show
Interesting.
him that if you kind of picked up on, he's kind of menacing, you know.
Yes.
So you never know.
He's not the nicest of the Ennead.
Yeah, you never know if he's on Mark's side or if he's trying to get rid of Mark, if
Right.
he's controlling Mark. Mark in the show is very clear that he doesn't trust Khonshu at all,
Right.
and then Layla therefore also doesn't trust Khonshu. And so,
Right.
to me, to be juggling that multiple plot points, you kind of have to spend more time with the man. I can understand why. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that if Murray Abraham was the perfect choice for the voice of Khonshu, that's pretty clear.
Yeah, the voice of Khonshu was
Yeah.
great.
He has that like almost calm but menacing sound at the same time. It's hard to like you feel like you should trust him, but then you feel like you shouldn't trust him at the exact same time. He kind of pulls off a voice that's kind of crosses between both. But yeah, so I can understand for a more casual audience, you know, especially when you have a movie that's placing so much hidden stuff here and there. Again, like I reference Shutter Island, you know, and you can throw an Inception in there. That those films are not for everyone. Not everyone likes those like psychological benders, like mind benders, you know.
Right.
And this show tries to steer more into that direction where it's trying to have you guess what's going to happen, but you're usually wrong on where it's going.
Yeah, and it's great that you mentioned the Shutter Island thing because it's also it's the whole idea of, yeah, you think you got a hold of it. No, you don't. And then you think you have a hold of what's going on, but you don't. And like
No,
it keeps
exactly.
you on your toes, right? In the best way.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like even for me, like all the way up until the end, I had no idea where they were going. I was like, okay, wait.
Yes.
So did
Yes.
he die? Was this all in his mind? Like, okay, I have no idea where they're going right now.
Right.
Like, you know, there were so many theories. Like people were like, okay, like maybe, and then the biggest curiosity is like, okay, where has Jake been the entire time? Like every other episode, it's like, okay, he's gonna appear, and then he doesn't. And so it's interesting because then you're like, well, what if they were willing to change his wife? Maybe they changed his origin story, and so it's like you're kind of strung along on the right. And I commend the director and Oscar Isaac specifically because it's not easy to basically act along yourself, you know, and that's where he basically did. It's Oscar Isaac was giving a moving performance alongside himself. And so, yeah, yes, it's not like other Marvel shows or movies, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's a different take. It's a different side of the same universe, which is why I like the idea of the multiverse being like a theme that's running around Marvel now because it's like we've expanded. I feel like Marvel kind of understands that they've expanded 616 as much as they can, right? So now we have to start looking beyond, or either beyond 616, which those that know Marvel, that's the main Marvel Earth, right? They either have to span beyond different reaches of 616, or they have to move beyond 616, which is what they're doing. Right. It's interesting that you mentioned the idea of having to focus on the man instead of the suit or the hero, because a lot of I've heard this said a long time. A lot of people call Moon Knight Marvel's Batman, which I don't agree, but I can see why, just because of the heavy trauma behind the character, especially in the psychological sense, right? But I find it interesting how it took almost 60 years of the character's existence in the silver screen and the big screen for us to be able to appreciate a movie where Batman is 90% on screen. Does that make sense?
True. Yeah.
Because even then, a lot of people are saying, "Where's Bruce Wayne?" like us that know the books know that okay, this is a time in Batman's career where the Bruce Wayne persona hasn't been created, right? Which is why I love about the film. I know we're kind of crossing streams, but at the end of the film, you kind of start seeing the birth of the idea that he has to create. Bruce Wayne has to do something because Batman can't do it all, right?
Right.
So I like the fact that this character is able to find, it has a good story reason to be able to focus on the man, because to me, all the focus that they did on the man makes those superhero moments a lot stronger, especially what a lot of people maybe because personally I may not be the only one, but the last episode of Moonlight is Power Rangers. That's just what I think.
Go Power Rangers!
It was like one of the greatest Power Rangers tribute in the world. Like they got the poses, you got poses with the suits, you got battle with the suits, you got the Megazord. Like there's a lot of stuff. It's Power Rangers, damn it. But the reason Marvel Studios Power Rangers works in Egypt is because we did all the legwork.
Sure.
Because by the time that he summons the suit at the end, we have seen that he has completed his journey to become the hero that we need to save the day.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, and then they throw another thing a twist where he's about to die, and okay, he blacked out again, and everybody goes like, "Wait a minute, weren't the Power Rangers saving the day? What did we miss?"
Yeah.
But that's, which is awesome. But that's the kind of thing that I love about the show, and like you said, because they spend time on the man, and what a tragic story, and here's, I think, because I don't know how much Oscar Isaac was involved in the development that his character was going to have, but man, Oscar Isaac was given all the toys, and they let him loose, and it was so good.
They
Like,
literally gave him the toys. He has a Moonlight toy.
That is awesome. That is awesome. But his Stephen Grant, it's its own thing. Marc Spector, it's its own thing. The little that we saw of Jake Loxley is its own thing. I love the fact that they all feel so unique. And even when they're in the same screen together, which, by the way, can we talk about how the technology has advanced to the point where we cannot even tell which one is the CG double? Because I couldn't tell. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you could always.
I wouldn't be so sure. I don't think either was CG double, actually. I actually can think they did this because this is something they often do today, that actors aren't always in the scene at the same time, so to speak. They shoot. They can sort of shoot a scene. For example, a specific character in Doctor Strange 2 was supposedly not in that scene where they supposedly shared with Wanda at the same time. Yet, for example, but what I wonder if they sort of like, how should I put it? They recorded Steven and Mark individually, sort of next to back, and then they put it together as they went, so it looked like it went on at the same time.
Oh no, I totally agree. That's probably what they did. What I mean by the comment is that the movie magic was so awesome that you couldn't tell if there was a cut or edit anywhere.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
It was seamless. Like, which by the way, I love the fact that for being so lost throughout the whole show, I love the fact that they found a way to give everyone what they wanted, which is was both personalities to be face to face with each other.
No, definitely. Yeah.
And am I the now, Adam? You talked about episode 5,
Yes.
which I think we can both agree that's both our favorites. Isaac, is that your favorite episode? Do you have a favorite episode?
I said that the episode 5 was my favorite
Oh,
earlier
so
in
it
the
was
recording.
you. You're the one. No.
Yes.
But what I love about that episode, apart from the character work and the revelations that we get, again, Marvel not holding back. But I love the fact that Marvel said, "Wait a minute, we're taking to the underworld." Yeah. So, do you want us to just do the? Do you want us just to do the insane asylum? No, no, no. We're gonna open it, and it's gonna be a river of sand. What do you mean? Won't that sound crazy? Yeah, it will, but that's fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I can only imagine the pitch, right? The conversations. And the idea that, like, they said, okay, we're going to do, like, the whole Egyptian thing. No, but we're going to go into the pyramids. Oh, no, we're going to full on do the mummy. But isn't that expensive? No, we're still going to do it. Like, I love the fact that they did like, they said they were going to do the thing, and they did the thing. You know how a lot of times you have a movie about a character, and it's kind of like you can kind of see how the studio says, let's not do the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, let's just say, let's put him in the suit, but let's not do the whole thing. You know, like, I love how they went on with everything. I love the fact that there's mythos everywhere. I love the fact that Stephen Grant is like an expert in all this stuff, and Marc Spector is not. Like, I like the interaction. Also, I like the interactions with Layla, because Layla, apart from the fact, if it wasn't because Oscar Isaac is doing so much heavy lifting, I would say that May Kalawabi was the star of the show, because every time she's on screen, brother, oh my god, she's just great. She's just great.
Not to
And
mention they have extremely good chemistry. Team.
phenomenal chemistry, and the fact that when you see her speak, when you see her speak, and you see all the interactions, how when she start the way you can tell that she really loves Mark, and she begins to understand Mark's condition. You know what I mean? And the fact that not only are they showing us the life of a person with said condition, but the life of a person that lives with a person with this condition. Like, they found a way to wrap all those things together in a very fluent story, without kind of like having her as a simple supporting role. Like she's the type of character, and she was able to carry her character. Like, this is a character that has her own story, has her own motives, and they all feel strong. And what a great way to explore cultural diversity. I mean, they picked the right actress, and am I the only one that went like, yes, when the little kid asked her, "Are you an Egyptian superhero?" and she said, "Yes." I
That
screamed.
was kind of cute.
It was
I mean,
amazing.
maybe not scream, but I can admit it was kind of cute.
Did you enjoy that? How do you feel with the whole diversity thing, Adam? Do you think they did it right here?
I think they did. So, like I said, in the original comics, the the character that Layla is portraying is Marlene, and they changed her to be more Egyptian, which I think was the right call. And
Is
I think
Marlene
it's
American?
yes, Marlene's American, and
Okay,
so they changed her to be
well
Layla,
done.
which is a new character. And I think that's good for one, for story purposes, because you don't know where they're going, and two, because it brings more diversity. And I like the fact that they basically, okay, so she changes into, I believe it's a superhero called the Golden Scare. I might be wrong on that, and that means that she might be around more often in other future Marvel films and stuff, which I think is great. You know, like they're bringing more ethnic representation, and that's cool. Like when the little girl says, "Are you?" and I'm sure that meant a lot to the director because, as we know, the director himself is
Yes.
Egyptian, and so I'm
You mean
sure like
the showrunner? You mean?
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. There you go. I'm sorry. And
No, no, no.
so
Yeah.
Yeah, so this gives it a chance to bring more representation. It also shows, people from other ethnicities like, hey, we can have importance as well. And so for her to immediately be like, yes, I am a superhero, because she could have been like, no, I'm just borrowing the suit, to seal this away, this giant kaiju. But she's like embraced it, like, yes, I am. I am the
I
superhero.
love how I
So
went Power Rangers and you went full Toho.
yeah, got the Godzilla. There you go, the
Yeah,
two kaiju battling in the back.
right.
But what's crazy is that if you were to ask Mark that, he probably wouldn't admit that he was a superhero. And so Layla is more,
Yes.
because she's more righteous. Like, yes, I am.
Yes.
And
See,
so
if you
it's
ask
crazy,
that to Steven, Steven would say yes. Mark, maybe
right?
not.
Mark knows. Yes. No,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and that's cool because, like, you have the Jewish representation through Mark, and then the Egyptian representation through Layla, and I think that was great, the way that they handled that moment where it's like, yes. There are some parts in the film that were not handled great in terms of ethnicity. The Mandarin, don't even get me started.
We're not
That
going to
was
do
not real
that.
Mandarin. Yep.
We're not going to do that.
Are you talking
What,
about the Iron Man 3 thing?
Yes.
no,
Well,
no, 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 no,
I
no,
do
no,
love
no,
the
no, no.
fact that yeah, I do like the fact that they found a way
Mhm.
to do it right with Shang-Chi, which
Yes, with Shang-Chi they did it right. But you know what? You know what? In all fairness, though, like they're focusing on the Egyptian parts, and I cut them some slack. So,
yep,
and the Egyptian parts, they killed it. They did awesome parts.
yep.
And so, but yes, no, in terms of bringing awareness to not just mental, disabilities, but to ethnicities, like even the cultural awareness, where you see us, Mark at the funeral of his mom, and he's wearing a yarmulke on the top
Yeah.
of his head, and it's like,
Yep.
wow, like they're really like bringing representation. Then they're not like shoving it down your throat. They're just like, it's there
They're
though.
just saying, "Hey, this is this character's culture." So we're going to if we're in a situation and you can tell that he's not necessarily someone that practices Judaism,
Right.
right? But out of respect of his parents, he's wearing his yarmulke, even if he's not going into
Oh,
the house.
so I just wanted to touch on this before I forget. I like how you mentioned the part of the underworld, and it's crazy because Marvel's really smart. They future-proof themselves. They mentioned that underworld part is one of many different planes of underworld, and that's smart because you already have like the Black Panther underworld, right, which we have
Yes.
visited, and if
Yes.
they want to go
They're
in
not
different
putting themselves in a
directions,
corner and saying this
right,
is it. Right.
this is it, because you're gonna be like, well, how come this doesn't look Egyptian compared to everyone else? And it's smart because if they ever want to, especially if they want to go in more darker routes like Ghost Rider, they can, because they're like, well, it's just another plane, right?
Right. Right.
So smart.
And you can think that I'm sorry. I didn't want
Oh, no, no, I was done.
to. And to think like this is I think we've seen at least four because we know that there's a realm like this in Doctor Strange because of course every realm is there, right? We know
Mhm.
there's the Wakandan afterlife. We know there's the underworld with the Ennead and the Egyptian. And we also know of
Mhm.
Valhalla because Thor has
Oh,
spoken
true.
about it a lot. And we've seen glimpses of what Valhalla should look like, even though they were weird and part of a weird vision in Age of Ultron that nobody kind of agrees that is there. Um, but yeah, that's a very good observation. And also, the whole thing about representation that I love about here is the fact that Marvel Marvel takes it seriously. And it's funny because when you think about it, in the 60s and 70s, when a lot of these characters were created, did we really care about representation? No. So a lot of the representation or a lot of the imagery for these characters was the perspective of a white man. Not in
Mhm.
a bad way, because we do know that, and I don't mean this in a political sense, we do know that Stanley was, may he rest in peace, was a very liberal person and very open-minded in the best
Mhm.
way. Because he really did care about reaching readers. That's really, I mean, it's a business thing, but also he didn't want to alienate readers. He wanted these
Right.
characters to reach any reader, as many readers as he could. So he found ways of creating characters that people could connect with from all races, from all backgrounds. But I love the
Right.
fact that following that philosophy, Kevin Feige and his team has always taken the time to say, okay, we have this character that we want to bring forth. Okay, so we know this character is African American. We know that this character is deeply rooted in African heritage. So who do we give this to? So they find Ryan Coogler. And they find the team that brought us Black Panther. We have this character that is deep in Norse mythology and all that stuff. And I'm thinking of the first one. And then, so what do we do to bring this over the top character? We go to the guy that loves Shakespeare, and we go to the guy that loves European history, and we go to Kenneth Branagh, and he brought us the first Thor. Right?
And then, I can tell you right now that they aren't exactly true to the source material with the Northern mythology, if that's what you're...
but they're true to the comic book, and they have the sensibility of the comic it wants to bring. Right. No, and I know.
That's a different thing.
Right. And then we have Mohammed Diab, which, what a great eye, and what a great way. First of all, great on Kevin Feige on hiring this guy, because apart from the fact that he's very talented and he was able to run this show in a phenomenal way, but having a pulse to his culture and to his people, and the sensibility of Marvel Studios to letting him just do the. I mean, it just sounds. I don't want to sound like I'm imposing, but like they gave him freedom in a way that they did with Ryan Coogler, right? So that he can express the elements of his culture the way he wanted, and go as deep as he wanted. And think about it, because he actually tweeted about it when he was thinking about Layla coming out. I was like, as the avatar of Taweret, he said, now my daughter can see an Egyptian superhero, someone with her hair like hers, and stuff like that. Like those little things, and the fact that those things came to be because Marvel Studios understood that, okay, if we're going to do this character, we got to do all the parts that make this character work. Which is why, and this is funny because I see this taking place also when you go to No Way Home, because we don't lose Uncle Ben in No Way Home, but we still have the Aunt May situation, which I think was brilliant, because now we have something personal to connect with Tom Holland's Spider-Man in a way that we had with all the previous iterations, but it was different. So those are the kind of things and sensibilities that I enjoy about the creators that we see bringing these characters to life, and doing that culturally. I did want to ask you, bringing that culture with Moon Knight was great, and the team behind it just did a great job with it. I wanted to ask you, Adam, is Marc Spector Jewish?
Yes, he is.
Awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, so he's Jewish, man. And one of the things I also wanted to mention is, isn't it awesome that at the very end they even let Oscar Isaac's ethnicity shine through at the very end? Because Oscar Isaac is Guatemalan, and they let him speak in Spanish for Jake Lockley, so we got to hear his natural, like, Spanish-speaking voice for that part, like, to come out.
Wait, is Jake Lockley like a Latino personality?
No, but he's more. So he's like a street cabbie. So he kind of.
So he knows he
picks up stuff. Yeah,
right.
So he kind of. In the comics, Jake Lockley is actually the one that takes on the Mr. Knight personality versus the Stephen Grant personality, and that's because he takes on more of the detective part. So it's kind of like, you know how, like, I hate to make this comparison, but you know how Batman's good at, like, adopting multiple languages. Same thing, kind of like with Jake Lockley. He's good at, like, because he plays a lot of detective work. In terms of the three personalities, he's the more detective one.
Right. I like before we start wrapping up and go towards, like, the post-credit scene, because I think we're starting to, unless there's something in particular you guys want to throw in here, before we start heading into the closing of it, what do we say about Ethan Hawke here? I think he was great for the type of character that he was. I mean, because if you want someone to be menacing and kind and terrifying at the same time, I think Ethan Hawke's the guy.
Definitely.
A lot of people complain how a lot of
He
big
nailed
names,
it.
yeah, and also
Mhm.
in a universe where a lot of people have complained that a lot of big actors are kind of wasted on film, right?
Mhm.
Like a lot of people talk about Kate Blanchett and like the whole thing with Michael Douglas, but personally, I don't think that they've really wasted anything. And a lot of these guys, also guys and gals, big name actors that come to this world, a lot of them say, "Oh, we're doing it because our kids like it." You know what I mean? Which is
Right.
great. Why not do something that makes your kids happy and also put smiles on their faces? And you know what? You'll get paid. Like for example, one of the things that I loved and I think was awesome is like there's no Odin without Anthony Hopkins, in my opinion. Like he is like Odin. Like he's just boom there. But Ethan Hawke was great. I mean, there's something about his performance that is just nuanced. It's like this quiet, terrifying voice, right? I don't know. He was great. He kicked it right. He was awesome on it.
Mhm.
Do you guys have a favorite scene, a favorite moment? Isaac.
I think it was where my favorite moment was honestly chapter episode 5 as a whole.
Okay.
You know that I'm a sucker for more personal moments.
Yeah.
That entire episode was personal moments, if that makes any sense.
Adam, do you have a do you have a favorite scene, moment?
Mm. Favorite scene or moment? You know what? Yes, I do. I like when Mark Spector and Stephen Grant basically come to peace with each other and they're switching while fighting Arthur Harrow between the two personalities. And so it's either Moon Knight or Mr. Knight fighting him. And I thought that was awesome. That was great. I love
You know,
that moment. That was awesome.
Adam, you got to stop reading my notes, okay? That's not why I brought you here, okay? No, no, like, yes, I love episode 5. I think episode 5 is 100% the strongest episode and one of the best. In, I think,
Right.
almost all of the Marvel shows. Don't kill me, people that love WandaVision. Um, but I think it's one of the best, if not the best.
Mhm.
I still say that season 3 of Daredevil is one of the best seasons of TV. Period. But that's me. Um, but that whole sequence of Mark Spector deciding that the afterlife is not good enough without Steven. That moment where he realizes that he's a part of him, that he's
Right.
that he's not complete without him, and goes back to rescue this personality, this friend that he created for himself. And I love because that has a multiple meanings. It's not just the fact that he's accepting Steven as part of himself, but in a way, he's coming to terms with his condition and
Right.
he's embracing his condition as a part of who he is, for better or worse. Which which is interesting because in that sequence when he regains the powers of the moon and is able to re-enter in that power Khonshu and all that, we do find out that he has come to terms with himself and is more together than ever, but he's not perfect. And I love the fact that when he blacks out, we find out that he's still not 100%, right? But I gotta say, all that from there leading to him switching between Moon Knight and Minster Knight, like it was a deck of cards. So simply, that was a treat for the eyes. It was so great. And also, is that scene or that whole sequence, and then the whole Power Rangers scene, where you see like that one shot of, I think Arthur Harrow is kind of like choking Moon Knight, and then in the background you see Amit crushing Khonshu.
Yeah.
Like that was like, I don't know, it was amazing. And of course, Layla's Tower suit, that was awesome. It was great. It was great.
It was. It was
Um,
awesome.
that was
Hope
great.
to see more of it.
Now, let's go to that post-credit scene before we wrap up, because as you guys know, this was originally announced as a limited series, and I think after what we saw, it is officially season 1, because I think they want to come back to do more Moon Knight.
Mhm.
A lot of people were wondering throughout the whole season, where's Jake Loxley? Which those that know enough know that that's a third personality. So, how was it to feel that after everything that happened, we find out that Conchu suckered Mark? I don't know what was more like a gut punch. And to me, I love the fact that it ends with a "what the," you know what I mean? Was it that Conchu betrayed Mark, or the fact that maybe Mark remembers making the pact with Conchu, but maybe it was always Jake that made the pact?
That's an interesting theory. I hadn't thought of that. That it was Jake that made the pact and not Mark. Well,
And maybe the idea that Mark is seeing himself doing it is because that's maybe what Conchu allows him to remember.
yeah,
Because the interesting thing is what Conchu says in that scene right before he has Jake kill Harrow is kill Harrow / Ahmed at that point, is that Mark doesn't know how broken he really is.
right,
But Conchu always knew how broken he is. So it
right.
makes me think. And also when you mentioned like Jake is like the protector, right?
Hmm.
You got to think with everything that Mark's been through, maybe Mark wanted out. You know what I mean?
Right,
And Jake was the one saying no.
right. Well, you have to, like I said, that they don't. All three personalities don't really trust Khonshu for good reason. Um, I don't know if you guys want me to tell you this. This is kind of going into potential spoiler territory for season 2, but
Do it.
uh, do it. So, in one of the comics, Khonshu specifically picked Mark because he's so fractured, and that is because he's trying to basically get an anchor to the mortal plane, so that basically his personality overwrites all of them, and he becomes the dominant personality over Mark and all the other ones.
So
So
Conchu wants to be he wants to become a fourth personality to then dominate the body.
right,
As
so
so
he basically
instead of having an avatar, he wanted to
right.
be Mark Spector.
He'll be Mark Spector. He'll basically he wanted to fracture Mark's to the point so much and make him go so insane that he would become like the dominant personality. And so basically Mark would just be almost like comatose, and Contra would just take over. And so that was always like
That is
in that specific
crazy.
comic. Right. So there could be, if you like, Khonshu did keep his promise in terms of he let Steven and Mark go, but technically Moon Knight is not done because Jake is still Moon Knight. We just haven't seen his version of the suit yet. And so, but it does exist. In fact, I think the costume designer said that if he were to design it, it would look more like the classic Moon Knight, which is black, the black and white suit instead of all white. And so,
Interesting.
which makes sense because it's the darker personality, right? And so, but
How
yeah,
very
so
Venom of them.
right, very Venom. But yeah,
Yeah.
so in terms of, it is possible that Jake stayed with Khonshu because he's the more violent personality, or it could be that he doesn't trust Khonshu, and so they could go into that further. Now, if you keep in mind, it's throughout the show we see hints that Jake is around, which in fact we
Yes.
even specifically see him briefly when Arthur Harrow is interviewing uh, Mark. You'll see briefly that Mark switches to a bandaged nose, and then he switches back where the bandage is immediately gone. And in fact, his accent switches a little bit to sound more like he's from Brooklyn. And so we've never heard that. In fact, Oscar Isaac said that he has an extra accent that is somewhere in there, and I think that belongs to Jake Lockley. And so it's very weird. It's a very brief moment where you see Jake is talking to Arthur Harrow, we also see him inside the coffin, right? He's trying to get
Yes.
out.
Yeah.
And then and there's a moment where there's a lot of like hidden clues throughout the show. There's a moment where Steven is learning that Mark is another personality, right? But when he's looking at the mirror, it's a 3 mirror. So he's looking, and so one of them that he's looking at is Mark, but then the other, and then one he's looking at is himself, and the other one is Jake. And so, and
I
then we
always thought
also
about
see,
that also in the ending,
yeah,
like in the
yeah,
end credits, you can see that when they show Oscar Isaac, you see
right,
3 faces. You don't just see
right.
2 or 1. Yeah.
So Jake has always been shown to be there. In fact, it's also theorized that he was. Remember at the beginning that Steven has no memory of this girl that he asked out, and
Yes.
it doesn't seem like Mark would do that because Mark is very committed to Layla. So that's
Right.
more than likely Jake. And so Jake has been kind of in the background, kind of leading up to this moment. That's why, again, Khonshu kind of knew, he's always known, he's been manipulating the scenes from the background. And so him losing Steven or Mark probably he didn't care. He was just like, well, I'll always have Jake. And so,
Yeah, which also brings another dimension. Like, is Khonshu the villain of season 2? Um,
right,
which
which I
is
think they might. Yeah,
which would be great. Which would be great.
yeah,
Which will bring another level of complexity because, and also will kind of be an interesting middle finger to season 1, because the whole
right,
thing was about stopping Ahmed because she was this bad god that was going to do these bad things. But then you got Khonshu doing kind of worse things.
right. Well, we've seen a brief hint that he's actually very villain-like. Because if you remember Arthur Harrow, when he's talking to Khonshu when he's been sealed away, he says, "All the times that you broke me," he says, "I thank you for that." And
Yep.
so it's like we see
You
that
prepped me for
Mark's
this journey.
right. So Mark Spector is not the first Avatar that Khonshu has like tried to break. And
Yep.
so he's very villain-like. We haven't really seen that much because we haven't got to spend a lot of time with Khonshu so far, because
Right.
Khonshu's main mission was always like, okay, we're gonna stop Ahmed. But now that he got what he wanted, where's he gonna go from here? And
Like Ahmed
so
was the only one that could stop him, maybe.
it's possible, it's
Yeah.
it's hard. And then you also have to keep in mind that the rest of the Inuit has been kind of wiped out, sort of, or at least their avatars have been. So he's basically like the last one remaining, potentially Basque. If we kind of, there's a theory that Basque is connected to the rest of that, but he's kind of unchallenged right now. And so,
Yeah.
what kind of havoc would he play? The other thing that I think is really interesting is that they've made Moon Knight more mystical. This is a more mystical iteration of Moon Knight, and less gadgets and less stuff. This is more like even his costume itself, right, is mystical. It's brought on by
Right.
Khonshu. Versus in the comics, Moon Knight just kind of gets like a power buff during the moon, right? And so like different cycles of the moon. And
So he's more gadget heavy, more than anything.
yes, he's usually more gadget. He still has powers, but it's not like, even like his crescent darts are usually gadgets, not like like parts of the suit that were brought on by Khonshu.
I actually like
But
him being mystical.
yeah, but we see a hint that they might be going in a slightly less mystical direction. Because if you look at the limo that Jake Lockley's driving, and it says Spectre, so that means that they might have switched the Jake Lockley role with the Stephen Grant role, which means that the Jake Lockley is now the millionaire, and Stephen Grant is not.
Interesting.
Because Stephen Grant in the comics is the personality that makes Mark all the money, and he's the one that basically helps Mark afford what he needs to afford, right? So he's got like all these innovation ideas. He's basically the Bruce Wayne personality, and
Interesting.
they seem to have flipped that. And so, because I thought that, okay, well, I guess there's no version of him that's wealthy, but you see Jake driving away in a giant limo, and at the end of the limo it says Spectre, and that's usually the limo that Stephen Grant drives or is carried around in the comics. So it seems like there is a wealthy version of Marc Spector.
Okay, now I can't wait. Damn it, Adam, you got me all excited.
I got you hyped. There we go. Mission done.
So, I don't know, guys. Do you have anything else to say about Moon Knight? Isaac?
Sorry, I was muted. No, I really don't. It was interesting hearing all the details from Adam, though. That
was awesome. It's great talking to you, Adam. Thank you for joining us, man.
Yeah,
we gotta do this more.
I appreciate it. Definitely. Last note, please, we need to see a Moon Knight and Punisher team up.
That face. Well,
I'm gonna say one thing, Adam, and I only say this to people that I care about. You bastard. You're filling me with these ideas. No, that sounds, especially Jordan Bernthal, so metal.
Yeah, man. Well, it looks like he might be canon because they're bringing back the Daredevil, so you never know.
Okay, see, we need to stop right now. You're going to get me very excited. But guys, this is our talk. Another take of the Shadow After podcast, talking Moon Knight. It was awesome. So how about we put some polls out there and go home? Adam, if people want to find you in the webs and talk more awesome anime, comics, academics, Moon Knight, Punisher, if you want to get people hyped, where can people find you, man?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. You can find me at Anime Gaming Lift on Twitter.
Awesome. Isaac, where can people find you?
Well, you can find my work over at Bobo Entertainment, and you can find me over at Endlomaniac on Twitter, and you can find our anime pod, the Amateur Taco Pod. Amateur Taco over at the Amateur Taco Pod, where we are on every podcast site besides Podbean and on YouTube.
And you can find me at the Scarlet Fan 52 on Twitter, at the Scarlet Fan 52 on Instagram, and at the Scarlet Fan 52 on TikTok, even though I have no idea what I'm doing there. And you can follow us at the Shatter After on Twitter, and make sure you click subscribe to the Nova Cinephile Network, and you find us there as we go. And you want to listen to us in podcast form, the Shatter After is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever podcasts are found, except Podbean for some reason. But you can find us anywhere. Have it awesome, guys. Stay cool and watch your movies. Peace.
Hey,